It's time to talk fantasy football on the OFN today, our lads football network. That means Draft Sharks. But this guy is not Jared Smola. Matt Schauf joining
True.
us. How's it going, Matt?
It's going great. I wake up every day and realize I'm not Jared Smola, but then I press on anyway.
Oh, it's always a tough realization, isn't it? Yes, for all of us to tell you the truth. But anyway, uh, we are going to plug on without Jared and talk about what's going on in fantasy football. The first official week of being able to pick up players, and this is being posted on Thursday morning. So everybody already knows what they're getting as far as the free agent pickups this week. And that's okay. This particular report is posted on Thursdays to kind of just update a lot of the things that happened in week one, and also just take a look at maybe how your team can get better, not necessarily just from this waiver wire pickup deal, but for so much more. We are also going to post up here, as you can see, there it is. There is the draft shot. I don't want to put that in your face. So there you go. This is where people can check out, of course, by linking in from our lads, or of course, depending if they've already got a link and a bookmark directly to the page, they can do that as well. Hopefully, they signed up from our lads. And as Draft Sharks, of course, is our newest and best fantasy partner, our only fantasy partner at ourlads.com. Before we get into this, Matt, I tell you what, let's quickly talk about how are your teams doing? Because how many teams do you have?
I always get asked that, and I honestly don't know the exact
Oh
number.
no, he doesn't
It's always
know.
one or two more. It's always one or two more than I remember because I check on Tuesday and realize that there was some injured guy that I forgot to get out of some lineup.
Okay, all right. Then the obvious question then is why?
I have tried to at least whittle it down from the number of industry leagues that I used to play, and it's not an insane number. But
Is
most
it
of the
under
leagues I
30?
played, yes, it's definitely
Okay,
under
so you're not
30.
like Theo.
No, I'm not. I don't understand how the highest of high stakes players play as many leagues as they do. I certainly have a lot of best ball drafts, but the in season management is the one that gets me every year. So I
Yeah,
try to make sure I'm not in an exorbitant number of full season management leagues.
yeah. You would have to think that's like a full time job. And again, if you're making enough money from it, maybe it is. And I got no problem with that,
Yeah.
which is why I can't wait. Hopefully, I'll be able to get Theo on the show soon because I want to know. I want to get into
I,
that.
I'm not organized enough to do it.
Yeah, you have to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, look, and I can understand too if you're in the industry, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe well, just like our league, which we just started, our new dynasty league, that maybe you're in certain leagues just because it's your job to be you're partnering with other say leagues or websites and hey I got to be a part of this. It's not just hey yeah me and my buddies we're all in like individual like 15 leagues and we're all like I got 15 different friends. That would be different. That would be like insane. But I could imagine that some at least some portion of your leagues are probably based on business. So
Yeah, and especially when you're early in your career, you just kind of say yes to all the opportunities, and then a bunch of those leagues carry over year to year, and all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, wait a second, I am not playing very well in these leagues, and I'm not actually getting anything from it. I think it's time for me to clip that one, and then you know shift my focus a little bit."
there you go. All right. So here is by the way here is the one we want to show people first, and we're going to close the report by taking a look at our dynasty league after week one. But here's a bunch of things that you can get just by popping on the Draft Sharks website, and this is where you get just tons of information. Of course, you're going to get the waiver pickups for week two. You got the Shark Bites, which is also going to update you as always on all the latest injury concerns and just who's hot, who's not kind of deal. Matter of fact, Jared has a usage takeaway. He just posted. There you go. Now we go. So Jared just posted this. What's this one about? This usage? What does this do?
This tracks playing time from the previous week, snap rates, route rates, so you can see which running backs were more involved in the passing game, for example, who's getting the ball more. Because the usage is very useful because we can all see the basic numbers. We can see how many carries everybody got, how many yards, whatever. But a lot of times, if you look past that, you can see somebody who had a really good role just didn't have the numbers come out the way that they wanted to, or the opposite. There could be somebody that had a big day, but it masked that they didn't play as much as their stats might indicate. So it can show you both, boom and bust potential going forward.
Yeah, because I mean, look at this one already, and this is of course figures. I mean, I've been trying to get. I was a big Joshua Kelly fan coming out of college. I thought he was going to have a better career so far. It hasn't happened, but maybe he just didn't have the right coach. And now that he has a coach that's actually going to run the football and use that as an actual, I mean, that's part of why the Chargers just offensively, yeah, it's if you have Herbert as your quarterback in fantasy, you love it, but in order for them, if you're just a fan of the team, you want them to evenly distribute not only the running game to the passing game, but also you don't overextend Eckler. And right here is a key. Joshua Kelly has just one game, but he almost had the same amount of snap rates as Austin Eckler,
Yeah,
and,
and
and that was a big game.
they went shockingly run heavy in that game. I would guess that one shifts way back in the other direction, but maybe it's at least an indicator that they don't go as pass heavy as last year when they were
Yeah.
one of the two most pass heavy teams, or one of the top few most pass heavy teams in the league.
And then here's one on Kyron Williams. So here's a player that everybody's picked up this week. He is no longer a free agent. And I understand why he was a free agent in most leagues, even though he wasn't one in ours. But I understand it. Everybody understands it. Again, it's only 1 week, and he did not have. Neither guy had a good average carry number, and I don't really know if that's going to continue. I mean, not continue. I understand if you need a running back and you want to bring him into your team and you want some depth, no problem bringing Kyron Williams. But I wouldn't be excited about Kyron Williams in the Rams backfield. I don't see it, and I think the numbers tell you that. But interesting, as Jared points out here, is that hey, Kyron Williams was the number one running back, clearly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the change to take away from it is I am taking Kyron Williams as their top running back going forward. The thing to not take from how the Rams did in week one is I don't think that their offense is suddenly exciting just because they exploded in that game against Seattle. I think when we look back at the end of the year, it very well might be their very best offensive
Yeah.
performance of the entire season.
Yeah, and also because of the fact that, and I know we there's nothing here on receivers, but that's a big deal too. Of course, what happened with the rookie Nakua, and you've got Atwell, and look, Seattle. Keeping in mind that they had an injured secondary, so the Rams took advantage of it. If that secondary is 100% healthy, that game ain't happening like that. Now I don't know what happened defensively, but offensively it's a different story still. But that's a key point too, wouldn't you say? Again, because there's a lot of fantasy owners that I'm sure picked up Nakua, and probably some of them that picked up Atwell as well. No pun intended.
Mm-hmm. I think both Nakua and Atwell are certainly worth picking up this week. One thing is once Cooper Kupp comes back, like Puka Nakua was basically the Cooper Kupp fill-in with the way he was used in week one, but we don't really know for sure yet who's going to slip to the number 4 receiver when Cooper Kupp comes back in. Nakua played slightly less than both Tutu Atwell and Van Jefferson. I would assume that Van Jefferson stays on the field most among those three when Kupp comes back. But, the thing to keep in mind is just that it's uncertain. Don't assume that everything you saw in week one is for real because lots of it will change.
Yeah. That was the surprising thing a little bit. It's like, wait a second, Van Jefferson wasn't one of the top 2 guys, but there was rhyme and reason to it, and it worked. The Ravens, that's another story. So, of course, a lot of it more is towards the running backs, of course. Everybody deciding who to pick up. Do I pick up Justice Hill? Do I pick up Edwards? And so we would think most of those guys were picked up. I was thinking of it myself, but not in my league. I wasn't really going to be able to where I was because I was picking 8th this week, and I was like, I'm probably not going to get it anyway. But if I do, all right, I'd probably go with Edwards. But then, yeah, again, same thing. Is how long is that? Are they really going to go the whole season like that? And I don't know. I mean, I actually decided that instead of wasting, I wasn't going to get one of those guys in the first round. So instead, I think with my second pick this week, I just picked up Melvin Gordon. I said, you know what? He's got the biggest upside. Still only 30 years old. He's not 34 or anything like that. And this is a run. We've seen some pretty bad running backs or average running backs at Baltimore have success. So I just figured, why not Melvin Gordon? What do you think about those three running backs? And do you think, and by the way, I also picked up Hunt because I figured sooner or later someone's going to sign him. Maybe it's the Ravens, maybe it's another team. But what do you think, first of all, about the Ravens backfield?
Yeah, I think that the market is overrating Justice Hill quite a bit just because he scored 2 touchdowns last week. He and Gus Edwards worked evenly, very evenly. I mean, Justice Hill had 1 carry before J.K. Dobbins got hurt. The only non J.K. Dobbins running back carry before Dobbins went down, but it was split evenly otherwise. Gus Edwards ran in for a 2 point conversion after one of those touchdown runs. So it's not like 197-pound Justice Hill is their goal line back. And it's also not like Gus Edwards is not going to be on the field for any passing downs because they also split routes. So I think the market is overvaluing Justice Hill. If I think I expect both of them to be similar going forward. And like you said, I think that somebody else will work in, whether it's Melvin Gordon, whether it's rookie Keaton Mitchell, whether they sign somebody like Kareem Hunt, who visited a bunch of teams before the season started. And I agree is probably going to land somewhere. There are going to be other guys involved. I think there's room for both Hill and Edwards to give us some useful fantasy numbers at some point. I don't think either of them is going to be a true fantasy difference maker going forward.
Yeah, I agree. And great point to bring up Keaton Mitchell because I was a big Keaton Mitchell fan in college. Talked a lot about him in our draft show with Dave Syvertson, who's also, of course, in our draft league. Um, I know he's small. I get it. But, he's just at his, you could say, of course, group of five, he was a dynamic player. And you've seen some of those guys can translate. Now he's not going to be somebody that's going to get a ton of carries and reps, but somebody to keep an eye on. I mean, I was looking at the Cowboys running game against the Giants, and I didn't pay attention too much to the preseason. So I'm watching their running game, and I'm looking at all three of their running backs, and I'm like, I need binoculars. I mean, it's almost like they did it on purpose. It's like I thought Dowdle was Vaughn for a second when I saw because he's so small. I mean, that is the smallest backfield I have ever seen in the NFL.
I think you might be thinking of Kevontae Turpin because Dowdle is bigger, and Turpin is the guy that nobody was talking about.
Okay, yeah. I mean, so they put Turpin back there. They've got Vaughn back there. They've got Pollard back. It's like, do they really believe that they can win like that? But maybe that's why they got a bunch of them because I don't know. Those guys can't last. But anyway, my point is that if the Cowboys can load up with a bunch of smaller running backs, then Keaton Mitchell could have a place with the Ravens as well. Okay, Atlanta. So Atlanta doesn't have any small running back problems. That's for sure. They've got two big guys back there, and so far so good. But there were some problems overall. First of all, if you're somebody that has Algier, you're like really excited, right? Should you be?
You definitely should be excited. The one thing to keep in mind there is that a lot of his work came late in the game that they were winning by quite a bit to kind of salt it away. So he is that kind of back that you hand the ball to when you're trying to bleed the clock. So if you're looking at them, and especially if you're a Bijan Robinson manager, you might look at the numbers and be like, oh, crap, they're giving Tyler Algier so much. Bijan's going to suffer. I don't think that's going to stay the way that it was. We saw Bijan work a lot as a receiver. We saw him play more than Tyler Algier overall. I would be surprised if, half of the games this season end with Tyler Algier carrying more times than Bijan Robinson. It's certainly going to keep Algier involved. And I think that is a potential drain on Bijan Robinson's touches, but I don't think you should be overly worried and think that Algier is like their lead rusher here, like 1A to Bijan's 1B on the ground.
Okay. And taking a look at another article here from CH Herms on Dynasty, Drake London and Kyle Pitts. And so this is important from our Atlanta conversation. I played against this week in I only have two teams, and in my weekly I play my yearly every year, and I played against someone that had London, and I didn't no idea what was going on there, and I said, wow, really nothing. So and look, I understand everybody getting excited about London because he's not a rookie anymore. He's the number one guy. Who else are they going to throw the ball to? and this isn't going to last. I mean, he's going to put up numbers, but still, is for dynasty owners compared to somebody who just picked him for this year. There's a different philosophy, isn't it? Like I'm not worried really if I'm a dynasty guy.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry dynasty wise. This way of playing is just not sustainable. And sure, they won by a lot of points in week one, but they went 7-10 last year. So if they have another season like that, there's going to be a new coach probably by next year.
And of course that could open things up tremendously. So yeah, I guess that's you could look at it that way for sure. But look, I mean, even when he was in Tennessee, they had two guys that put up numbers. So it wasn't like I mean, they had. I think Corey was Corey Davis also 1,000 yards when they had Brown and Davis. Were they both 1,000 yard guys at the same time, or pretty close to it? I think.
Close. I don't know the ultimate numbers on Corey Davis.
Yeah, but they were pretty. I think they only that 1 year maybe together that they had these big numbers, and so it can happen. And it's just a matter of you got to get the because well again you got to also keep in mind who's the quarterback. I mean, I'm not going to throw the ball 35 times with Desmond Ritter. Now next year, if Ritter's not the quarterback and you go out and you mortgage your draft capital on one of these premier quarterbacks, which Atlanta probably will, then that all of a sudden, all right, we're not going to be Mr. We didn't mortgage the farm to get this quarterback to run to run the ball 60% of the time. So again, if you're a dynasty guy, just relax, be patient. By next year or the year after, they're gonna have a quarterback and they're gonna throw the ball more. So, what about the Giants? What the heck was that?
Yeah, what about the Giants? That was disgusting. I mean, kind of the opposite of the Rams. It can't possibly be that bad going forward, but it's worrisome. I mean, they should be some semblance of a professional team, especially year after going to the playoffs. And I don't care how good the Dallas defense is; it's not good enough that it should beat anybody 40-0.
Yeah, I just Jones looked off too. That's the thing that was surprising. Do you believe in Jones? Do you think he's ever does he have does he have the talent to be a top 10 quarterback?
I mean, I'm kind of middle on Daniel Jones. I've never been. I'm not in his corner, arguing him up for other people. I'm not. I don't think that he's awful. I think they have all quarterback, and that's. I mean, that's about the best I can say for him. Honestly, I don't think that he's. I don't think there's anything special ahead of him, but I think he could also do worse.
And as far as are you worried at all, or should fans be worried at all, owners of any of the receivers, including Darren Waller? I mean, Waller had again. You hear about this injury thing. That's the thing that concerned me the most. I know Jared was big on Waller, and I can understand why. It made a lot of sense, and he should have a really big season. But the injury thing that was the thing that concerned me the most about where to draft him. How to put his profile, and then all of a sudden you hear already a little bit of it may not be, of course, major, but that just kind of how do you where are you on Waller right now, and where are you basically on and even Goddard overall, and some of the guys that may have not produced so far after week one.
I remain high on Waller overall. I mean, it's not hard to put some insurance on your roster behind him in case of an injury, and it's encouraging that it was a late week hamstring and he still played through it on a rainy night and stayed in the game even after they were well behind. He was their leading target option. Nothing went right for them on offense, so I'm not going to take too much away from how his specific performance came out. I like that he was the lead target. I like that he played fine through the hamstring. I think it's going to get a lot better for him. And I didn't expect there to be much to like at receiver for the Giants, and that there doesn't appear to be, can only help Darren Waller's target count going forward. I think Dallas Goedert, it just had a week that you throw out. The Patriots are good on defense. They tend to play tight ends well. It sounded like from some of the Philly guys that New England was playing Goddard like they were trying to knock him off early in his route and focus on not letting him get open. So, if that's the case, you can just have a bad game. It's not like he
Sure.
wasn't on the field. It's not like Philly exploded passing without him. So I'm just throwing that one out. I haven't changed anything in my mind on Goddard going forward.
All right, so then let's say you have Waller, and let's say you have not picked up that backup yet, and there are a few guys that might be available, and including maybe Hayden Hurst or Henry, Hunter Henry for the Patriots. Now, I'll admit that I came very close to picking up Henry in our dynasty league at the end of the draft, and I just, and matter of fact, Jared just picked him up this week for a measly $12. So I think if he's out there and you have someone like Waller, especially, or anybody that you just want to make sure you have some insurance, I think Henry's a really good option. If you had to pick one or the other, Hurst or Henry, which way would you go?
Oh, week one was wonderful for me because Hayden Hurst and Hunter Henry were the two tight ends I talked about most this offseason because they were going so late in drafts,
Yeah.
despite having these central roles to their offenses. So I would pick up either one. If you have to pick one, I like Hayden Hurst because I like his weekly path to target count more than Hunter Henry's. But Hunter Henry has been a plus touchdown producer throughout his career. So that's upside at a position where touchdowns are especially important. And, I don't think that we're going to have clear leaders among New England wide receivers. And I do think we're going to have a much better pass offense this year than what we had last year when they went without a coordinator. So I think both guys are good options to have around. Both guys could wind up finishing inside the top 12. I don't think that week one was necessarily a mirage for either of them, even though the Patriots passing volume is certainly going to come down from 54 attempts versus Philly.
Yeah, that's I guess the other way to look at it, anybody who had Stevenson or Elliott, don't panic that they're going to become a passing team. So, speaking of Patriot receivers, what did you think about the start for their former receivers? Well, actually, not former. One of them is former. And you got Kendrick Bourne, and he came up with a couple scores. But then Myers had a big game for the Raiders. So what about those two guys? Because Bourne is not a sexy fantasy guy. Neither guy are sexy fantasy guys.
Kendrick Bourne does this every once in a while. He pops up for a big game here or there, makes you think he's going to be something. This is his third season with New England, though. He averaged 2.7 catches per game over the previous two. So I don't think that he's going to remain their leading receiver going forward. I think he will have other games where he pops up to lead them in receiving. But Devontae Parker was out. Juju Smith-Schuster was limited. So the report heading in was that his knee was problematic. Their wide receivers coach has since said that they weren't limiting him for the knee. It was just the package for the game. So I wouldn't be surprised if they, switch up the playing time splits among the receivers going forward, which is what they kind of indicated they were going to do throughout the season. Once Parker gets back, I think he's the best bet for targets among New England wideouts, especially if Juju is going to be limited and does have potentially a knee issue. Jacoby Myers, and it's related to Juju Smith-Schuster because they let Myers walk for the Raiders and then gave Juju the exact same contract that Myers got. That was stupid as far as I'm concerned. You already have a guy who's at least a similar player, and Jacoby Myers, I believe, is still younger, at least younger in his playing career than Juju. So there's more room for him to turn into more. I didn't understand it at the time. I think it is already looking like it made less sense. And really, it's just like a continuation of a surprising trend of New England miscalculating wide receivers. They just keep getting it wrong over and over again.
Yep. They can't figure that out. It's and that's what's holding them back, no question about it. And then also, before I let you go, are there any other players that maybe you were considering or you're thinking about, but you need to see a little bit more proof? Like one of those guys that I was considering picking up this week, and I didn't, but it was like another option, and I would have been happy with him. Was Rashad Bateman in my one fantasy league, because really it's just about staying healthy. And I know of course they got Beckham there. I just don't care. I mean, Bateman, if he's healthy, should be the number one receiver on that team.
Oh, they sure made it look like in week one they want Zay Flowers to be it. I mean, it's one game, so maybe that changes, but Zay Flowers would be the one I'm most excited about there. I certainly think it's fine to stash Bateman and see what happens because he was also a first round pick who has flashed at times for Baltimore. My favorite thing to do this week is to see who people give up on too quickly to grab those hot waiver claims because it's a week to not overreact. It's a week to not underreact. we always get plenty of both of those. I'm not going to be the buyer on Justice Hill this week, but I very well might be the secondary buyer on whatever running back your league mate cuts to pick up Justice Hill, or receiver, somebody who underperformed in week 1, but didn't do so in a way that says I'm going to stink going forward. I like to see who makes it to waivers that wasn't there before. Tyjae Spears might be a name worth bringing up because he didn't put up anything big numbers wise, but he had encouraging playing time behind Derrick Henry. Played a lot in the passing game. He's a high level handcuff. If Derrick Henry goes down at some point, I
Oh
think
yeah.
Tyjae Spears that backfield for a team that is going to run the ball plenty. He's somebody that you might find somebody in your league thinking, "Crap, I'm in trouble at running back or wide receiver or whatever. I'm going to go ahead and cut this guy because I don't have Derrick Henry anyway." If Tyjae Spears hits the wire this week and you got a spot, I would absolutely go ahead and stash him.
All right. That's a great way to end the interview. Lots going on in fantasy football after week 1. Matter of fact, just before I let you go, there is this is our league. So, um, how did you got up to a slow start this week, right? In this league?
Yes, I did.
And what was the issue in this league?
Well, one thing was I didn't get Mark Andrews out of my lineup. That was when I was talking about missing a league somewhere. But yeah, that was my primary issue. Otherwise, Lamar Jackson didn't really score. Jamal Williams didn't score. Rashad White didn't score. So it wasn't a good week anyway, even if I did get Mark Andrews out.
What do you think about Godwin?
I think he'll be fine because he should be their target leader there. Baker Mayfield had a good preseason. He doesn't need to be amazing for Chris Godwin to produce. And Chris Godwin was being drafted just outside of wide receiver 2 range. So he doesn't have to have a tremendous season to pay off where he went.
Oh, Mike Evans seemed to have a pretty good amount of targets. He looked like his number one guy. Was that the case? I didn't
Yeah,
look at it, but it looked like it when I was watching some of the game.
I think it's there are going to be weeks where either of them happens to be the leader, but I think overall Chris Godwin's going to lead Mike Evans in targets, but both should be fine, especially relative to where they were drafted.
Yeah, it's nice to have Evans as a backup on your current Dynasty League team, that's for sure. And you also have the 3 of the guys. Well, one guy we didn't talk about was Gainwell, but I can't imagine he's available. I mean, if he was available in free agency in anybody's league, shame on everybody. So, yeah, you think Gainwell is going to end up being the number 1 guy going forward?
I do, but he's got a rib issue this week that sounds like it might keep him from playing against the Vikings. And of course, they have the short turnaround to Thursday night. So I guess I wouldn't be surprised if he can't make it for that one. I hate Thursday night games for just that reason. But I mean, I don't think you come out and use a guy that dominantly ahead of everybody else in the backfield because, I don't know, you're going to feature a different guy every week. To me, it says that Gainwell is their favorite. I don't think he's going to dominate it the way he did in week 1, but he'd be my top bet to lead Philly in touches for the year.
And by the way, I was talking about Dallas running backs. Deuce Vaughn, I don't know. I know it's 1 game, but man, he's small. And I love him, but he's just small. And I just wonder if he can. I think the reason to keep him, because I have him on my weekly, I think that, and I think it was one of my last picks. I think the only reason that I would keep him is for injury. That's it. As if Pollard goes down, he could end up being a pretty big part because that offense can score. But you talk about being patient. That's a guy that you should, unless you have to make a move, that's a guy you probably have to be patient with. Not dynasty, of course. I'm just talking on the year to year leagues.
Yeah, and in a redraft league, I would say that he's not somebody you would have to cling to because even if Tony Pollard goes down, it's probably going to be a committee behind him. I mean, we saw Kevontae Turpin, like we talked about before.
Right.
Kevontae Turpin into that game. Nobody was expecting him to be any level of featured ball carrier. So I think it's important to be careful not to assume direct handcuff situations for every team because most of them don't actually have them.
Matt, appreciate it. What's going on now with Draft Sharks? Is this actually just the time to chill out, or I know again you're going to do articles. Do you post like several articles a week at this time of year?
Oh yeah, we've got articles every day. We've got rankings, but rest of season, weekly rankings, dynasty rankings that get updated all the time. We do weekly write-ups for the rankings. There's certainly stuff going on constantly, videos on various topics, DFS content. So definitely not time to chill. It won't be until January.
And you guys do your show when?
We've got a Tuesday video on waivers that just went up yesterday for the first time. We do a weekly preview on Thursday, DFS show on Friday. Those go out on our YouTube channel as well as through our pod listening channels.
And we'll, of course, make sure to post links in the description area so you can immediately check those shows out. And, of course, we'll put a link in, as always, just to the site to follow everything going on at Draft Sharks, and definitely the top, our top fantasy provider. And it's awesome to see you guys, because you guys are just going to continue to grow, no question about it. Because it's only been how many years? Has Draft Sharks
We've been around since 1999.
And then the real growth, though, I think is starting to happen over the last few years, just as far as visibility and the new tools that you guys have. And that's the thing that's going to really start to happen. So I'm glad we're going to be a part of it. Matt, appreciate it. And we'll probably talk again next month.
Greg, we're glad to have you on board as well, and I look forward to it.
All right. We'll see you next time here on our fantasy coverage on the Our Lads Football Network.